I'm Hemant Mehta.
This is Jessica Blumke.
And you're listening to the podcast for FriendlyAtheist.com. And we're here today with Stephanie Drury, who is the creator of the fantastic Facebook page and Twitter account and all things associated with it called Stuff Christian Culture Likes. So, Stephanie, we'll just start off. What's wrong with Christian culture? What is this type of stuff that Christian culture likes?
The big problem with Christian culture is that it has the word Christian in it. And they're referencing Christ, who lived 2,000 years ago. And it has the evangelical Christian culture, at least here in America. I'm sure in many other parts of the world as well, but I kind of focus on North American Christian culture. It has almost nothing to do with what the actual Jesus Christ taught and example, the model he gave. So that's my big problem. If they would just leave the word Christian out of it, I wouldn't have any kind of problem. That I'm like, I just have to do something.
But they claim to represent all Christians, and that includes you, right? And that's what you have an issue with?
Yeah, I don't even call myself a Christian, but I'm kind of in this weird space where I'm open to a lot of stuff, and some of it resonates to me really a lot, but I don't call myself a Christian. Probably because of the association with people like this who do so much violence in the name of someone who was really great, like Jesus Christ was a nice guy. So, don't let me in with all that, it was kind of my thought.
So what are some of the worst examples of Christian culture that you've found?
Lately, I'm really annoyed, to put it mildly, with the daddy-daughter dates, that phenomenon that's going around.
The purity balls and the daddy-daughter dances.
The purity balls, it's straight up patriarchy that is kind of in this Orwellian, slow intravenous drip. You don't notice what's going on. It's so evil and it's so, territorial, and you're treating females like property and they're going along with it. I think that the patriarchy, having women go along with it and go, oh, this is good then. Okay, I'll just suck it up and I'll take this because God wants me to. I'm just like, no, no, don't do that. It's really, really bad. It hurts everybody. It's bad for guys and girls. So,
well, you just don't understand that Jesus went to a daddy-daughter dance himself. I'm sure that happened somewhere.
Yeah, when he went to that, prostitute at the well, he told her, what the fuck are you doing here? Get the fuck away from me. You're my property now. I don't think that you should even be here. Yeah.
Explain to me the fascination. So almost every Friday night, I can set my clock to it, I will watch my Twitter account, and it happens every week, where you will start tweeting or retweeting people who are saying, I'm on a date with my hashtag hot wife. And you will retweet 10 of these, a dozen of these, and they're all Christians saying the same thing. I'm on a date with my hot wife. It's my hot wife. The wife is always hot. And even creepier is that a lot of times they'll include the picture, so we can judge her hotness, I guess, for ourselves.
Oh,
what is it about that particular thing? One, why is that a Christian thing specifically, I guess, or do other people do that as well? And why, I can take a guess, but why does that bother you so much? It seems to be specifically in Christian culture, I think because Christian culture is so about abstinence until marriage and then go, 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 go. And you're supposed to be okay with that, or not just okay, excited about it. So my theory is that men are trying to convince themselves, yeah, I'm glad I waited for marriage. Yeah, my wife is really hot. I'm really attracted to her. It's that whole do you protest too much kind of thing. That's my theory. What bothers me... Part of what bothers me about what you're saying is when they tweet this stuff, they have a picture we're at dinner right now, here's my hot wife, and the subtext is I'm gonna bang her tonight. Oof. And that's creepy.
Don't you wish you could?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same way people are look at my new car, it's so shiny and awesome. Look at my hot. It's a property thing, right? It's a this one is mine, or your wife is hot. Thank you. No, it's not a compliment to you. Ugh, it's just
exactly. But what's so interesting is I was talking with someone about this the other day, and she's like, I grew up in Christian culture, and I was taught that being complimented, that was the best thing, to be a Proverbs 31 wife who was, your husband was proud of and was really hot. It goes back to that misogyny that's being ingrained, and it's if you can be excited to be treated like a piece of meat, then all the better for the patriarchy. So it's just really harmful for boys too. I have a son and a daughter, and I just it's not good for either of them. And
I have to say, I think it goes beyond just Christian culture, though. I think that's, I mean, I really wish I cared a lot less about what I looked like than I do, and I did not grow up Christian. Right. It's just being a girl. Ugh, I don't like it.
Yeah, and it's like, well, in Christianity, you're supposed to not care about, Jesus was about what's in your heart, supposedly. So that's another example of Christian culture, like mixing up like the sacred ancient mysticism with the, modern commercial culture. So that's kind of gross.
Well, that kind of brings up an interesting point that I've always been baffled by, is the fact that, not to get into politics, but people on the right tend to be in religion, and they're completely fine with, like, cherry picking the things that they want to. Like, they don't seem to care that Jesus was super into caring for the poor, but they're willing to say, like, these other things are tenets of my faith. Why do you think?
But Jesus said nothing about homosexuality, but that's the thing we're going to harp on.
This is where we're going to plant our flag. Why do you think that is?
It just drives me crazy. And I was thinking recently that if it's us following the Bible. It's people trying to follow the Bible that has gotten everyone into trouble. Like, if Christians just followed Christ and, like, throughout the Old Testament and throughout all, the convoluted Christian culture stuff, I think that everything would be a lot better. Because Jesus talked about kindness and forgiveness and caring for the poor. Didn't say one word about gay people. Didn't say anything about treating women like property,
Well, can you explain to me the difference between somebody who follows the Bible and follows Jesus? Because in my non-theistic brain, to me that's the same thing, because everything we know about Jesus is from the Bible.
Follow the Bible. I mean, I know, I dig Judaism. I think that I've been to a rabbinical service, and they're so into questioning. Like, the rabbi got up there and he's like, "What do you think about this? This could be interpreted like this." Like, it was like a conversation, and I feel like the Jews tend to, from what I understand, lend a lot more credibility to people's own interpretation of this stuff, which I think is great, because if it's more like a democracy that way. When there's a dictatorship, which I feel Christian culture is kind of doing, that say this is the inerrant word of God. Like, that's when you get into trouble. It's like, what? If God's real, then couldn't he or she speak through whatever? Why would they need to pass down this one certain text, that is limited? And, why would you absolutely have to believe the earth was created in 6 days?
Well, it's kind of like God.
I think that actual followers of Christ are pretty rare. I would have to say. I think it's so unchallenged. Like, people just don't challenge it. Yeah, that's what the Bible says. Okay, that's good. So I have to think that it's just, like I said, Orwellian kind of thoughts, like Brave New World stuff going on.
But don't Christians, by definition, say they're followers of Christ? Like, what makes
them special compared to the non-follower? I mean, are there Christians who are not followers of Christ?
I feel like no Christian would ever say, like, "Oh, I'm a Christian. I'm not super into Christ, though."
See, it's so annoying to me is that it gets muddled up. Like, if you look at what Christ actually did and said, it is so different from what Christian culture says. Like, for example, if you looked on Twitter at some random bio of someone who said they were a follower of Christ, 9 times out of 10, that person would think that it's a sin to be gay and that they don't help the poor. I bet you anything. So, is that y'all's experience? What do you think about that sort of thing?
Oh,
I've had the same exact experience. Like, when they say follower of Christ, my head's thinking, "Oh, you're super conservative.
Right.
I know exactly where you stand on many, many issues." And I think the one that bothered me the most of all of these, there was this Christian, like, slam poet, Jefferson Bethke, who had this viral YouTube video that said, I'm not a Christian, I'm a follower of Christ. It's like, that's the same. The way you're describing it, those are the same thing.
I didn't see that.
Oh my God.
That would probably blow up.
That thing was hilarious, because the thing is, it's a nice idea to say that. I can see why it resonates with so many people. But when he actually talks about his ideas, and by the way, from that video, he got a book deal from it. When you read his book as well, it's the same. His ideas are no different than that of conservative Christians. It's just framed in this slightly different way.
I'm baffled by, and it's especially as somebody like me personally. I didn't grow up going to a church. I didn't, my community was largely Catholic, but most of the people around me were relatively conservative, and I've just never gotten that link between, like, I believe in the teachings of Jesus, except for, like, fuck homeless people. They dug their own grave. They can lie in it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know. And nor have I had anybody explain it to me
so
properly.
much, and people are putting words in his mouth, and it's just so annoying to put it mildly. It's just like, straight.
Well, let me say this: going back to that topic of the hashtag hot wife thing, you're not just doing it to mock these people. You're doing it. Part of the reason, I would think, is you're trying to say, stop just judging your wife on how she looks or how you think she looks. Why isn't anyone using hashtag, I'm on a date with hashtag my intelligent wife? No one ever seems to say that. And what is the response you get from people you retweet, and they know what you're doing? They know you're mocking them, and what do they say to you?
Well,
do they get the point?
No one ever writes me back after I retweet them. Like maybe 1% of the time they'll follow me or say thanks for the retweet. But like no one looks at what I'm doing. Like even with that rock and worship on Sundays, like no one ever like is embarrassed I'm calling them out or like they just don't get it.
We should mention that on Sunday morning, speaking of setting my watch by it, on Sunday morning you do a similar thing where you say it's Sunday morning, time for rock and worship, and there's all these Christians tweeting about how rockin' their worship is because it's not Jesus doesn't listen if your worship isn't rockin'.
Yeah. So. If this church ain't rocking, don't come knocking, Jesus.
There's nothing less rockin' than Christian worship. Like they're just by definition, it's just absolutely. It's so sad.
I kind of really want to.
I can really say.
I kind of really want to go to one of those stadium Jesus churches. Churches is what people call them. The stadium churches.
Like Joel Osteen's, which is in a former basketball arena.
Oh, he gives me the EBGBs.
I love him.
Do you?
I enjoy what my mom loves watching
she does
him.
Not.
I can go home and visit my parents, and she's not Christian any sense of the word, but she will watch Joel Osteen because she likes his message, and I can understand that. But when you hear what I think what annoys me, and this is weird because it never happens anywhere else, like Rick Warren, for example, I like listening to him when he does interviews.
Yeah.
And his sermons bother the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Joel Osteen, his sermons are fine. But when he does interviews, every time it's like, Joel Osteen, what do you think about gay marriage? I never think about these things. Well, what do you think about abortion? I don't think about the. What do you think about? He doesn't think about anything.
And yet everybody follows exactly what he thinks.
And everyone loves the guy.
And here we are. No, I do have a secret.
And by the way, Joel Osteen, also hashtag hot wife, apparently.
Oh, does he?
Because that's the one thing everyone seems to say about his wife.
That's
true. Did you hear about how she threw a big tantrum on an airplane a couple of years ago?
No. I did hear that once.
Didn't bring her stuff fast enough in first class. You have to Google it because it was insane.
I want to look that up. I have to admit, even though I went to public school, I love Christian music. Not all Christian music, but like I grew up singing
choir.
Like
Christian music
not rockin'
or
Christian
hymns?
music, like hymns and like this. I don't know why. I think it's because I grew up singing in choir. And I just like the music that they play in churches. It's weird, but I love it. I love Christmas music, especially the ones about Jesus. Just my favorite songs. I don't know. I don't know what that says about me as a person.
I love Amy Grant even still. It's totally left over. And I've just embraced it. Like I Instagrammed a picture. I'm like, I'm baking gluten-free Eucharist bread right now and listening to Amy Grant Unguarded, so don't fuck with me.
So speaking of which, what aspects of Christian culture do you actually partake in? What do you like?
I think that I grew up preacher's kid in Arkansas, so like total Bible Belt, Southern Baptist. So I was like immersed in that, and I went along with it like really pretty thoroughly in a lot. Well, I was kind of cranky too. Like I'm like, why do we do this? Where does the Bible say this? But I was like trying to make my parents like me. I guess didn't really work, but. So I mean, just all of it is just dumb, Like I think that Jesus was just a weirdo, like whoever he was, like he freaked everybody out, and compelled people and drew them to him. In the end, they killed him because he was so weird, and threatening, and obviously on some level. So I just have to think that. Whoever Jesus actually was, there's something really, really messy about it. And, scary and, just a new concept. But he was a new economy of where you forgive your enemies and love your neighbor and turn the other cheek. So I just think that all that Christian culture stuff is just coated with, the commercial slime. It just feels like a big, Entertainment Network channel commercial when I look at that stuff. We got to be rocking. We got to have hot wives. It's all about image.
Got to bring the kids in.
So, yeah.
I have a question for you. If you found out tomorrow, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there was no human person that we know is Jesus Christ, would that change much of your outlook? Because, we would still have the messages from...
It might, but at the same time, I hope that I would go to, what's the concept of love? What is, this has been powerful for me. And, the concept of forgiveness, there's something to that where, if you don't forgive somebody for something, that it really can eat at you. Maybe more a psychological concept. So I hope that I would, be able, I try to hold all this openly. I try to be this could be totally wrong. I just want to kind of be loose with it and always be open to changing my mind about it. Because I think, like I said, when you get so certain and convinced that, this mystical thing is correct, I think that's where some bad stuff can really start to happen.
Well, it's like the people who say, if it weren't for Jesus, if it weren't for God, if it weren't for my religion, I would be stealing or killing or raping. And that's just horrifying. What a horrifying
I don't
what a terrible thing to think about yourself.
You don't think those people would actually do that?
I think that they would be, severely depressed and normal, or way happier and normal. I think... I feel like I know so many people in Christian culture who are just the depression is just right under the surface, but they're trying not to think about it all the time. I feel like they might use their Christian culture as a way not to connect with whatever darkness is roiling inside. I just feel like I know, I have some relatives that, quote, can't control their children because they don't want their children to, grow up and live with their boyfriend before they get married, or and that sort of thing really bums them out. And I'm like, you're just holding too tightly to it. So, I think it's that fear of critical thought that really gets people in trouble.
Do you think there's something about the Christian culture that you're really not allowed to be outwardly unhappy? You're supposed to go to church and you're supposed to be joyful and you're supposed to have, and it doesn't 100%. Allow for people to have regular emotions?
I have a post on that where it's actually, I have the picture for that on my blog for that post is, stuff Christian culture likes is acting happy. And I have the Austines together, Joel and Victoria, with their, Velveeta cream cheese smile or whatever. And I've heard so many of my friends say to their kids, have a happy heart like Jesus, if their kid is acting sad. And I will bark from across the room, Jesus was a man of sorrow and acquainted with grief, which is, a passage from Isaiah. But, I was he wasn't happy. You guys want to believe he's happy. I feel like they want this to be the opiate of masses. And you know what? Not necessarily. So,
what will we discover first? A picture of Bigfoot or a picture of Joel Osteen not smiling?
Ooh, good one.
I don't know.
There's lots of pictures of Bigfoot. I don't think there are any of Joel Osteen
smiling. I should point out, all the stuff we're talking about, it really isn't just making fun of this stuff. It is highlighting what Christian culture may be like. But you... from your Facebook feed and from your Twitter feed, it seems like a lot of other Christians, and they are outwardly Christian, they are evangelical, and they don't like the culture. They actually get a lot of healing from the sort of thing you do. What sort of things have you heard?
I hear that a lot. It's so nice. It is really, really nice and I think it goes back to having to act happy all the time. And in my Facebook feed, I'm like, I will not delete any comments. I will not ban any users. I've only banned one person. That's because he got physically threatening and weird. I think he had a traumatic brain injury or something. But anyway, I will let you say whatever you need to say, because you weren't allowed to do it in Christian culture. And I think that, being part of being a whole person is embracing your sadness and your anger. So, it needs to be there. Jesus got pissed, he tore up the temple. And I feel like Christian culture is that's okay that Jesus did that, but don't you do it, So
have you ever heard?
That's a bunch of bullshit.
Have you ever heard of that Mormon women have a saying called "Stay sweet"? It's kind of along the same thing of how just Christians in general. But I in Karen Stolzno's book, which I just read last week, they would hang up pictures that say "Stay sweet," and it's that idea of you're always present, happy. You're always happy, you're always there for your husband.
Oh,
and that sounds
gracious.
exhausting
I believe
to me.
it. I read, I'm so sad I'm blanking on her name right now, but it was a woman whose dad was a high priest in the Mormon church, and she escaped, got out somehow. But it was just, she was so severely depressed because they weren't allowed to have any other emotions than just being so happy. yeah, I believe that. I think that does a lot of damage.
One of it would be. One of the questions Jessica and I were chatting about before we got on the phone with you, Stephanie, is when a lot of these Christians, tweet these things, or they're in church and, always happy, or singing the songs with the sort of, I've been in some of these churches, they sing with this enthusiasm, their hands are in the air and waving.
Great songs.
Because, of course, they're all great songs. They're all hot wives and great songs. How much of it is they genuinely, sincerely feel those emotions, and how much of it is, I gotta keep up with this other guy in the church who also has a hot wife, so I gotta say this stuff. Mm-hmm. How much of it is keeping up with other Christians and playing the part, and how much is actually sincere?
Like, I mean, I can't say for sure, but I can say that for myself, I was always feeling the pressure to act like I was involved and I liked the music and that I was moved by it. And I have the kind of personality where I would just sit there and not do anything. Like, I refuse to stand up or raise my hand, but I don't know how many other people are genuinely feeling it. Like, I think some people really do feel it, but I know a lot of people, there's no way, because that music is, like, so annoying sometimes. Like, what if you're just in a bad mood? Like, why would you, be able for that to resonate with you? And, I think people are just so used to pretending at that point. So that's just so annoying.
Well, and I think
knock it off, Why is everyone so afraid of being sad? Come on.
Yeah. Well, and I think in my experience anyway, there's just something about knowing what we're all going to do. We're all going to do this together. Like, some of the most uncomfortable moments of my life were in a Catholic church, not because I was in a church, but if you've ever been to a Catholic service, you stand up now, you sit down now, and you kneel now, and you say
calisthenics.
this. Yeah, exactly. And yes. The first time I went to a Catholic service, I was singing in the choir, and everybody was standing up and sitting down, and I was so uncomfortable because I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and I felt like I stood out. And there's something really kind of nice once in a while of, like, we're all going to do this, and we're all going to do that together, and
you're part of a community.
You're part of a community.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. There's a definite, like, a community vibe. People are desperate for community. Like, and if they see someone who kind of has a strong voice, they'll be like, okay, I mean, I'll go towards it. I mean, that's human nature. Like, we tend to be, like, sheep-like in that way, herd mentality in some ways. So
that's not limited to religion in any way.
I'm sure there's comfort in it, as well as, you just get to check out. You don't have to think too hard, that's where it gets dangerous, I think.
Well, deferring to authority is also nice. This guy says a thing, and it's true.
And he's smiling, so it must be true.
And he's waving his arms.
Yeah.
I like that.
He said happy and he's super rich, so.
That's what Jesus wanted.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly, like Jesus said.
You said you don't call yourself a Christian, but you're not quite an atheist or anything like that. Did that change? Did that non-label come because of what you saw with the Christian culture, or did you always feel that way for a while and then this Christian culture stuff came later?
Yeah, I go to a church, and I've had a lot of difficulty though. I've changed churches in the past few years, and because of this sort of thing, like just like, I think you guys are too certain of what you're doing. I think you guys think that you're definitely right, and I'm not cool with that. So right now I'm at a church that kind of is totally open and graceful towards my agnosticism. And, I call myself an agnostic, but I was reading Vonnegut recently, and he called himself a Christ-worshiping agnostic. And I'm like, that really resonates with me because, like I said, I mean, Jesus said a lot of awesome stuff, and it was for peace and helping and love and stuff. So I feel it feels pretentious to say, but it's also like the most accurate thing to say, I think, now. So, just studying, the Christian culture, kind of calling it out and being like, I don't want to be in the same category as these assholes. And the fact too that my parents, my dad's a Southern Baptist minister, and my parents aren't super, involved. They just own me and my brother and my sister, like all of us. So I'm like, that's not very Christianly. I just want to take a break from being part of that, absolute label, that category right now. So,
do you find that the issue is with Christians as a mass or on an individual basis? Like when you meet just a Christian person, are you like, oh no, we have stuff in common, we can talk?
Yeah. I feel like there is so much movement if I can talk to just one person.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when you kind of speak in mass, and I get criticism on my Stuff Christian Culture Likes page for there being herd mentality, you know,
Sure.
where people are too protective of me. And I totally understand that, because once that happens, you're kind of recreating fundamentalism. But if you can just talk to one person,
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one, you can kind of, you know, find common ground, and you're like, oh, I actually kind of like you, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's
so
that's been my
there's
experience
something
too.
to it where I feel like if we could do that on an individual basis, I think a lot of ground could get covered. But it doesn't feel that way, you know. It's like, you know, we want to be part of a big mass culture. So I think that's why these big world religions and types of things, sports teams even, are so prominent for people.
Oh yeah.
And we're just drawn to them.
Stephanie, I think the reason I even found out about you in the first place is because you wrote this brilliant review of Mark Driscoll's book, Real Marriage. And I got to read to you from what you wrote there. You said, the writings of Mark Driscoll delight me in the way Tommy Wiseau's movie The Room delights me, which is the same way George W. Bush's Fool Me Once, Shame on You quote delights me, which is the same way the Miss Teen America contestant talking about maps and the Iraq delights me. What was it about that book that was so awful for you?
Well, you know what? I actually think that, I think that I was reviewing his book called Who Do You Think You Are? But I mean, not to defend his Real Marriage book. That was also an abysmal book. All
My
his writing
apologies
is
for
just
that,
so
yeah.
gross. But he makes these horrible sweeping statements like, you know, in a pinch, you could do all your counseling out of the book of Ephesians. You know, like, who the fuck says something like that? You know, like, I have been in psychological counseling and group settings where you do not want someone to be lay counseled by some unqualified pastor from the book of Ephesians, which is, you know, Paul. I'm jury's out on that guy. Anyway, so it's like who makes these sweeping statements to such a large audience, you know? So he just has such an agenda, just, you know, snake oil salesman kind of thing, and people fall for it. I mean, he's got massive followers, and I'm grateful that his empire seems to be cracking.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of his
Yeah.
pastors are now leaving the church and they're speaking out.
Yeah, thank God for that. Like, I would love to think I have just like a tiniest part in that. You know?
You're
Just
actually
bring it down because it's so creepy. It's just cult-like, you know.
You actually have a Twitter feed called, you know, @fake Mark Driscoll. And what was the impetus
Driscoll.
behind that?
I started that just kind of to make fun of him, and it's kind of like something to do while I was bored on my commute. You know, I didn't have a big agenda, but I was listening to a lot of his sermons and going, oh, this guy's the worst, because, you know, he's out of Seattle where I'm from, and I had a lot of friends who were going there, and I'm just thinking, dear God, this guy is he's like, this is Jonestown all over again. So I was listening to enough of his sermons where I started I'm like, oh, I bet I could tweet in his voice just to get some rage out, you know. So, you know, I started, you know, tweeting things like, well, you know, it's tomorrow's Grace's weigh-in. His wife's name was Grace. You know, her weigh-in's tomorrow, and, you know, she's been hitting the treadmill, so I'm feeling pretty good about the number we're going to see on the scale. And people were like, oh my gosh, I thought that was really Mark Driscoll. That's something he would say. I'm like, I know, right? Like, this is how ridiculous it is.
Mars Hill
fun.
Church actually got upset with you about that Twitter feed, right?
They did. They emailed me with like all this legalese and were saying, you know, Stephanie, you are allowed to have this Twitter account, but, you know, we need you to make it absolutely clear that it is a fake Twitter account. And I'm like, it's called Fake Driscoll. I don't know what else to tell you.
It's in the name there.
They were trying to, they try to puff themselves up and but.
In addition to some of Mark Driscoll's pastors kind of blowing the whistle and former Mars Hill members blowing the whistle on what was going on at that church, Driscoll himself actually seems to be on a social media break right now, because I think even he realized he just causes more trouble when he says stuff. I don't know when he's coming back, but what do you think?
I know.
I mean, is that helpful?
I kind of miss him. I mean, it's really hard to make fun of him when he's not not tweeting his stupid shit anymore. But they finally like took it away from him. So I'm pretty sure that was like he was pouting, and his PR team is like, Mark, you're just making it worse. He's like, no, I don't see one. Like, that's the scenario in my head.
That's a play waiting to happen right there.
Wrested away from him and changed the password or something.
I want to go back to something you said. You said the fake Mark Driscoll Twitter account came about because you were listening to his sermons a bunch. So you might do something that I do every now and then, which is you subscribe to some of these podcasts or you listen to these sermons for the sole purpose of getting upset. Because I do that. I do that a lot. There are some churches where I subscribe to their podcast and I get download their sermons every week. And it's like, what do I want to do during my commute? I need road rage. Let me turn one of them on because I know they're going to say something that just pisses me off.
I don't know how you do that. I get like hate reading things. I hate read things a lot, but podcasts, I feel like I don't need people talking in my ear. Like, this
I'm
is
currently
my time.
reading a book called by Tim LaHaye, the guy who wrote Left Behind, one of the ones, and it's called The Unhappy Homosexual.
Oh my God.
You know this is going to be full of good stuff.
Finally, somebody's writing that book.
I know.
We're all thinking.
Right. And it's written in the 70s, too. So there is no there's no desire to be politically correct. And it's funny because sometimes some of these churches will upload, will upload sermons from years ago. And like I have some from, like Willow Creek, which is in the suburbs of Chicago, huge church, when they're talking about gay people. And again, there is no desire to be politically correct. They say the nastiest things that even they know they couldn't get away with it today. But whatever, 10 years ago, they could probably get away with it.
I would love to hear that.
And they deleted it from their system because they don't want people to get it. But I still have it on iTunes because I didn't delete it.
You should transcribe it.
I should. I'll get on that.
Oh, we should do a dramatic reading of it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'll be Bill Hybels. You can also be Bill. We'll all be Bill Hybels.
We're all a little bit Bill Hybels.
Yes. Stephanie, do you think you actually have more Christian fans, Christian readers of your feeds, of your Twitter, Facebook accounts? Or do you think more atheists listen to you because you're kind of reiterating a lot of the things we tend to think about Christians, fairly or unfairly?
Yeah, I kind of think that most of the Christians who follow me are hate watching me, like we do to Mars Hill and to Willow Creek podcast. I know that a lot of them just watch me just to get mad, but kind of go, probably how Republicans watch The Daily Show or something.
Right.
I don't know where they're saying about it, But it's hard to get a read on it. I just like to think that, it'd be great. I do get emails sometimes of people going, I used to be really conservative, or I used to go to Mars Hill, and since, keeping up with your stuff, I've left that, and I'm thinking differently now. So I really like that. That feels good.
That's actually an interesting point, because one of the conversations we had in the atheist community is, does mockery play a role in when we're talking about religion? Because, you could say, let me mock religion, let me make fun of it, and a lot of people will say, well, don't make fun of it. If you want to go after the arguments, go after the arguments and stuff, but why disrespect it like that? Why make fun of it? And the argument's like, no, if you can make fun of it, people will learn that it's okay to criticize those beliefs.
Well, you can't be too precious about it.
Yeah.
Like if you're so precious you can't ever criticize or talk about something, then, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that's exactly what is so interesting about I guess there's a difference between like sarcasm and parody, I suppose, or making fun of someone and satirizing them. I think there are subtle differences where some are a little bit more playful than the other, but it kind of goes back to, if you are so sure that your religion is right, then why are you freaking out about us questioning it? So I feel like that growing up in the church, you're kind of like, the big forbidden thing was, don't you dare question it, or God will be mad. And now I'm kind of like, what? If God's out there, then he or she isn't going to mind me questioning it, because they're so big that why would they be threatened by a question? So I tell my kids, I'm like, you don't listen to anything I say about God. Anyone says. You listen to yourself and your heart. You think, you check in with yourself and you resonate with what's in there.
Presumably,
because I think that's where religion goes horribly wrong. You try to tell people to ignore their instincts and not question.
Yeah.
So,
presumably, your kids go to the same.
And being able to be playful with it and mock it.
Presumably, your kids go to the same church you do, and I wonder what would happen. What would your reaction be if they started doing some of the things within Christian culture that you just cringe when you see it? Are you afraid of that happening?
Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh, that would be the best way for them to rebel, is if they get purity rings and say they're waiting till marriage.
And by the way, they're 5 when they say this and they're wearing their rings.
That would be the best way to freak me out, yeah.
Mom, we're rebelling against you. I'm never having sex until marriage.
I'm going to play in the worship band, Mom.
It's every parent's nightmare.
I know.
It's actually, what's really funny is, you said you're an agnostic, but I could very easily see you, if you were a Christian, doing all these things because you feel like the Christian culture is taking away from a faith you really love, and that means so much to you, which in a sense it kind of is. I mean, you feel these people are ruining something that means so much to you. Do you think someone who is within that culture could do what you're doing? Do you think there are people within that culture who could say, all right, this is the stuff we do that's just kind of ridiculous to any outsider. We need to be aware of it. Do you think that thought goes through their heads?
You know what? I do. I have a lot of several friends. I say a lot, maybe a couple dozen people who I know through Stuff Christian Culture Likes who do attend like evangelical churches, and they'll message me and they're like, yeah, my church does cheesy things like you talk about. But there's something about it that keeps me going back. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, as long as you can discern what's cheese and what is meaningful to you and doesn't hurt, penalize people groups like, gay people or poor people, like just keep those straight in your head is what I would say, and go, yeah, them putting their hands up while they're worshiping, yeah, I don't want to do that. And that's kind of weird, but whatever, I'll let them do it.
I feel like that's
I think there's some value in that, too.
I feel like that's how people I know talk about reality TV. Like, I know it's terrible, but I like it, and so I'm going to keep watching it.
I know. No, I'm one of those people. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to watch like 5 minutes of Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
6 hours later.
Oh, my God, I can't stop watching this. I hate them.
Oh, God. It's hate watching. It's back to that.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Kim Kardashian and God have been connected.
Oh,
finally.
God, no, please.
She's been doing that in her head for years.
That was off the record, no.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You can read more about Stephanie at her website you could go to Facebook and go to Stuff Christian Culture Likes, or on Twitter, she is at Stuff CC Likes as well. Thank you for listening. Once again, I'm Hemant Mehta.
This is Jessica Blumke.
And you're listening to the podcast for friendlyatheist.com. And if you like what you're hearing and you want to see us keep doing more of this, feel free to go to patreon.com/Hemant. That's He-Man T. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much, Stephanie.